Security escorted Ren out while she clutched her designer bag, mascara running. "I didn't know it was stolen," she kept saying. The same girl who'd presented my logistics framework 7 months ago was now unemployed because the patents came back in my name exclusively. Dominic stood frozen at his desk, phone pressed to his ear. I heard him whisper, "The board wants answers I don't have." I adjusted my lace front and walked past. Bless your heart. My heels clicked against the marble floor of the downtown Chicago headquarters, each step echoing through the sudden silence of our floor. Folks were staring from their cubicles, mouths hanging open like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Ranatata stood by the copy machine, her usual smugness replaced with something that looked a whole lot like fear. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside, catching one last glimpse of Dominic's caramel face going ashy as his career crumbled in real time. The doors closed and I finally let myself breathe. My reflection in the polished steel showed a woman who looked calm, collected, professional. Inside, my heart was doing gymnastics, but my face stayed smooth. Big Mama always said the best revenge is served cold with a smile that don't reach your eyes. But to understand how I ended up watching my former boss's world collapse while I walked away in my good Louboutins, we gotta rewind 8 years. Back when I was 33 with 2 master's degrees and eidetic memory, and the kind of hope that only comes from believing the system actually works if you just try hard enough. I grew up on the South Side where my daddy ran Chambers Barbershop on 79th Street, and my mama taught algebra at the local high school. They raised me on the gospel of hard work and excellence, told me my brain was my ticket to something better. I believed them. When I got hired as a senior data analyst at Meridian Logistics, one of the fastest growing supply chain companies in the Midwest, I thought I'd made it. The office was in the Loop, all glass and steel and lake views, the kind of place where I could finally use everything I'd learned. My first year there, I created an inventory tracking system that reduced errors by 40%. I spent weekends developing predictive models that saved our biggest client almost $2 million in shipping costs. Every time I walked into that building smelling like the cocoa butter I rubbed on my skin and the confidence my parents had poured into me, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Then Dominic Hayes got hired as our new department head, and everything I thought I knew about how the world worked started to unravel. The first time Dominic stole my work, I convinced myself it was a misunderstanding. I'd spent 5 weeks developing an algorithm that predicted shipping delays based on weather patterns and port congestion, something that could revolutionize how we managed client expectations. I presented it to him in a private meeting, walking him through every detail with the kind of pride you feel when you know you've created something special. 2 weeks later, I watched him showcase it to the executive leadership team during the quarterly review, calling it his conceptual framework, while I sat in the back of the conference room feeling my stomach twist into knots. After the meeting, I approached him by the elevators. "Great presentation on the predictive model," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm glad the framework I developed is getting recognition." Dominic looked at me like I'd said something ridiculous, his perfectly lined beard not hiding the dismissiveness in his expression. "The conceptual approach was mine, Imani. You just helped with some of the data entry." I felt heat rise up my neck, but I swallowed it down. This was my second year at the company, and I was still trying to be a team player, still believing that if I just kept my head down and did excellent work, things would work out. That was my first mistake. Over the next 18 months, the pattern repeated itself like a nightmare on loop. I would identify a problem, develop a solution, share it with Dominic in good faith, and watch as he presented it as his own insight to leadership. Each time I brought it up, he'd twist it around, make it sound like I was misunderstanding how corporate collaboration worked. When I finally worked up the courage to talk to Eliana in Human Resources, she gave me that tired smile that Black women know too well. "Do you have documentation that these were exclusively your ideas?" she asked, barely looking up from her computer. I had my original files with creation dates, but she waved that away. "You developed these during work hours using company resources, correct? Then they belong to the company. Dominic is your supervisor. It's appropriate for him to present departmental achievements." I left her office understanding the real rules. Ideas flowed up, credit never flowed down, and being right didn't matter if you didn't have the right last name or connections. I might have stayed in that frustrating situation forever if not for what happened 9 months ago. I'd noticed massive inefficiencies in our cross-continental shipping routes, The kind of problem that was costing our clients serious money. So I did what I always did. I spent my weekends at my apartment in Bronzeville, gospel music playing low while I worked on my laptop, developing a comprehensive logistics framework that would cut costs by 34% and improve delivery times by 45%. This wasn't just good, it was revolutionary, the kind of innovation that could make a career. I prepared a detailed presentation, practiced it until I could recite it in my sleep, and walked into the quarterly strategy meeting ready to finally get the recognition I deserved. But Dominic intercepted me at the conference room door. His cologne too strong and his smile too smooth. Leadership's got a tight agenda today, Imani. We need to streamline things. Give me your materials and I'll incorporate the key points into my departmental overview. Something in my spirit told me not to hand over that folder, but I'd been trained my whole life to respect authority and trust the process. I gave it to him. Then I sat through that 4-hour meeting, watching the clock and waiting for my segment, only to hear Dominic rush through a 3-minute summary that completely missed the innovation and made it sound like a minor adjustment rather than a game changer. The initiative got shelved for further review, which in corporate speak meant it was dead. 3 weeks later, Ren Montgomery joined our team as a summer intern. She was 26, Ivy League educated with that confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself, and she just happened to be the niece of our CEO. She got invited to meetings I'd been excluded from, got FaceTime with executives I'd never even met, and walked around that office like she owned it. 5 weeks after that, she presented her new logistics framework to the executive team during a special session I wasn't invited to. It was my framework with superficial changes and a fancy new name. The initiative got greenlit immediately. Ren received a permanent senior position, and became the rising star of our department while I watched from my cubicle. The day after Ren's presentation, I confronted Dominic in his office. My hands were shaking but I kept my voice level. That framework was mine. Every calculation, every optimization, every single innovation. You know that. He leaned back in his leather chair, not even bothering to look concerned. Ren's approach incorporated senior leadership priorities that your version lacked. This is business, Imani. Results matter more than who came up with what first. You need to learn how things work if you want to advance here. I stood there feeling something break inside me that I didn't know could break. It wasn't just anger or hurt. It was the death of the belief system my parents had built in me. Excellence didn't matter. Hard work didn't matter. Merit was a myth they told people like me to keep us working while others took the credit and the rewards. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by 8 years of innovations that had made millions for Meridian Logistics, while my salary stayed stagnant and my career went nowhere. The smell of the greens I'd cooked earlier still hung in the air, and I could hear my downstairs neighbor playing Anita Baker, and something in me shifted like tectonic plates rearranging. If results mattered more than people, I would show them exactly what that philosophy cost. I started planning my exit strategy with the same methodical approach I used for everything else. I took my original logistics framework and enhanced it, identifying weaknesses and incorporating solutions that made the stolen version look primitive. But I was careful. I only worked on it at home, never touched company devices, never mentioned it at the office. I cataloged every instance where my work had been stolen, creating detailed records with timestamps, original files, and witness statements from colleagues who'd seen the pattern but stayed silent out of fear. Then I started reaching out to former employees who'd left under similar circumstances, meeting them for coffee at spots in Bronzeville and Hyde Park, away from corporate eyes. I discovered I wasn't alone. Tasha from product development had left after her patent-worthy innovation got claimed by her manager. Malik from client relations resigned when his strategy for retaining our largest account got presented by the vice president without credit. Each conversation revealed a company culture that systematically exploited its most innovative employees, while rewarding those who excelled at theft and politics. More importantly, these conversations built me a network of talented, undervalued professionals who recognized the same toxic patterns and were hungry for something different. 6 months before that awards ceremony, I approached Gail Iverson, a venture capitalist known for funding startups that disrupted established industries. I presented my enhanced logistics framework along with profiles of 9 industry veterans who'd committed to joining my venture if it secured funding. This could transform the entire sector, she said after reviewing my materials. But competition in this space is brutal. What makes you think you can pull this off? I showed her my second presentation, testimonials from 7 major clients who were frustrated with Meridian's inflexibility and willing to consider alternatives. I'm not just offering a better product, I told her. I'm offering them escape from a company that's too busy playing politics to serve them properly. 2 weeks later I had funding. For weeks after that, I had office space leased under a holding company name in Pilsen, legal agreements with my future team members, and patents filed for my framework. I reached out to clients discreetly, arranged meetings at restaurants in the West Loop, presented my solution, and secured tentative agreements contingent on my company's launch. Everything was in place, I just needed the right moment. The quarterly awards ceremony gave me that moment. When I learned that Run would be receiving the Innovation Excellence Award for her logistics framework, I knew exactly what to do. I prepared resignation letters for myself and my 11 colleagues, finalized client transfer agreements, and drafted the patent applications that would prove every innovation Dominic had claimed was stolen. That morning I dressed in my navy blue power suit, laid my edges smooth, and walked into that awards banquet holding my presentation folder like a weapon. I stood at the entrance watching colleagues file past me to their assigned seats, seeing Dominic guide Ran to a table near the executives, noticing Ranatata checking seating arrangements with that superior look she always wore. When she spotted me, her expression shifted to irritation. "You can wait outside," she said loud enough for people to turn and stare. "We're at capacity for the ceremony." I looked around that spacious room seeing empty chairs and knowing exactly what this was. This wasn't about capacity, it was about letting me know my place. In that moment, 8 years of accumulated disrespect crystallized into perfect clarity. I opened my laptop right there in the doorway and hit send on the email I prepared, the one containing our resignation letters, client transfer notifications, patent applications, and the press release scheduled to go live the next morning. Notification sounds chimed throughout the room like a symphony of destruction. I walked out before anyone could react, my heels clicking against marble as I left them to read about their own professional apocalypse. Security escorted Ren out while she clutched her designer bag, mascara running, and now I understood exactly how satisfying it felt to watch karma work in real time. But I wasn't done. I'd planned one more move that Dominic wouldn't see coming. Before I left the building, I stopped by the executive floor and personally handed the board chairman a flash drive containing not just evidence of Dominic's theft, but something else. Encrypted files showing how he'd been overcharging 3 major clients for services never rendered, pocketing the difference through a shell company. I'd discovered it 6 months earlier while building my case, and I'd saved it for exactly this moment. "You'll want to review this before the press gets it tomorrow," I told him, my voice sweet as peach cobbler. "Unless you'd prefer I include it in my interview with the Tribune." His face went pale. 2 hours later my phone rang with an offer, full executive position, equity, whatever I wanted. I declined while sitting in my new office in Pilsen, surrounded by my team who'd all walked out with me. "I already got everything I need," I told them. "But you might want to check Dominic's finances before the investigators do." 3 months later, Nexus Analytics had secured contracts with 35 clients and grown to 28 employees. Dominic was facing fraud charges and couldn't get hired anywhere in the industry. Run moved back east with her reputation in ruins. And me? I was building the kind of company where everyone's name went on their own work, where innovation got rewarded instead of stolen, where excellence actually mattered. Sometimes I think about my parents and their belief in the system, and I realize they weren't completely wrong. The system does work, just not the way they thought. You can't wait for the system to give you what you deserve. You gotta build your own system, write your own rules, and make sure the table you sit at is one you built yourself. Now when I walk through my office and smell the coffee brewing and hear my team collaborating without fear, I know I made the right choice. The scars from those 8 years still ache sometimes, but they remind me why I'll never let anyone take credit for my brilliance again. Won't he do it? If this story touched you in any way, if it made you think twice or feel something deep, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Let me know you out there. Your comment might be exactly what someone else scrolling needs to see today, might remind them they're not alone in whatever they're going through. Because that's what we do, we share our stories so somebody else can survive theirs, so the next person knows they can make it through too. So keep your circle tight, trust your instincts, And remember that every choice you make matters more than you think. You feel me?